collection I inherited was my dad's, and most of his stuff was like he had a lot of Bee Gees, Michael Jackson. He had some Bob James. And he had some good jazz stuff. So he really supported my musical taste developing after that. As far as DJing, he doesn't really care too much for it. He doesn't really like condemn me from it necessarily. My mom doesn't really think it's ladylike. She thinks that you know, the more I'm DJing, the less I'm in school or something. Yeah, I mean they're not too against it, but there's a lot more bigger priorities that they hold for me.
With regards to records, my dad didn't really value them as much since the whole CD player thing and the technological revolution of music happened. So he recorded most of his stuff on the tape, and we listened to tapes in the car a lot. And one of the songs that I managed to find as an adult was "The Firecracker" by Mass Production.
I mean, music has been a part of my life since I can remember. So my father was a jazz musician, so our whole front room was taken up with his stereo equipment and his record collection. I grew up listening to John Coltrane and Miles Davis and Oscar Peterson, some of the 50s pop stuff. You know, so I can remember 5, 6 years old looking at, you know, staring at a copy of Bitches Brew and thinking, wow.
I was living in Huntsville, Alabama with my mom and my sister and my brother. And usually after school or around the summertime when there was no school, we would just, you know, my mom would go to work, like, you know, don't open the door, you know, that type of thing. But she would just basically just say, you know, just stay in the house, be good. And we would just do all kinds of things, play pretend, you know, play house, stuff like that. And after a while, it just got kind of boring. And I just remember up against my mom's wall, she would have tons and tons of records, which my dad would say he lost in the war. But when I would get bored, I would sit and just look at each and every single record and just try to memorize each of the pictures, what they looked like. My mom was really heavy into R&B, so a lot of records that stuck out was a lot of the records that stuck out were Anita Baker, where she's in this blue floral dress and she's just kind of like lounging up against this wall. And then there's also the Luther Vandross record where he's got this leather jacket on and he's got the collar kind of all up like this, kind of, you know, popping the collar back in the 80s. But one record that stuck out, and I just thought it was just so strange when I was a kid, was Eddie Murphy. And on the cover is Eddie Murphy, and he's got this cheesy smile. He's just cheesing sideways, and he's got on a bow tie and no shirt under it, and he's got this brown leather jacket. And the thing that stuck out was he had a flower in his head. I'm like, why does he have a flower in his head? That's just so weird. But that record just resonates with me. It's probably gonna resonate with me for the rest of my life, but that's probably one record that sticks out. So that was my first experience with digging or looking at records, and I thought it was a blast. Like I had a lot of fun with it.
Mostly, I'm a big record collector from way back in the 70s. I got my first record probably in the late 60s. Bill Haley and the Comets, Rock Around the Clock. Same time at Christmas, got a little portable record player, and I got the Rock Around the Clock along with it. Since then things have changed. I really find reggae music over the last 30 years. I buy up a lot of things in the UK in the 70s, and now since moving around, you see, I lose a lot of those things. So I've been making a lot of trips down to Kingston, Jamaica, We'll do some digging down there in some of the old stores around Kingston, or what's left of some of the old stores.
I have a picture of myself with my first Mickey Mouse record player. I got it on my 4th birthday. And I played the hell out of, like, you know, I had all these 45s, Hot Rod Lincoln, Hot Pants.
So I started collecting records when I was in high school. I used to attend a lot of punk rock shows, and I always liked to buy the little 7 inches that they sold there. They sold a lot of 45s, a lot of LPs. It was mostly vinyl actually back then at the punk rock show. There was like no CDs or anything. And I got a record player because of that.
I got into records because of hip hop, because everything in hip hop is based on, you know, something else, some other kind of music or something from the past or whatever. So I think a lot of people through hip hop you get into other kinds of stuff, like you know, I got into funk and jazz and whatever the breaks or where the stuff was coming from. Hip hop as a way of getting you just into music and into records. So that's what made me fall in love with it, I guess.
I'm just an average record or vinyl head, and my thing is more R&B, soul, funk, rare groove. You know, I definitely mind the jazz part of things a lot. Records LA is a great store for that. There's other stores around the country that are good too. And, you know, people need to get out there and look for stuff and engage and be part of it, and not just do things because you're supposed to do them. You know, you should do them because you really like them. I waited around here for probably 2 hours to get my hands on 2 Pharoah Sanders records, just so, you know, waiting for the guy to sell them to Scott. And that's kind of how I am. That's part of the whole experience, why people should do it.
I started collecting a lot more jazz records. I started collecting a lot more hip hop actually through thrifting, because I would find that a lot of the DJs who were going into the digital realm were literally just kind of donating a lot of these record pool records that they would have. And I started finding a lot of really good stuff, and I wanted to get just expand from there. And now I've got, I don't know how many records I have. Maybe 9 crates, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes of 45s.
Growing up in London, of course, I deal with a lot of reggae music in the area, Lewisham, southeast London. Saxon Posse, that the big sound system there first introduced me to sound system. Man like Pato Banton chat over that sound. Smiley Culture. Lots of big people that come out in an English dance hall start off on the Saxon, a Lewisham sound system there, right there. So a good place to grow up if you like reggae music, you know, South London.
They used to have 10-cent records at the Moby Disc by my house. It was 10 cents each, or 100 records for $8. That's the only reason I have a record collection at all, really. They had 100 records for $8, so that's how I got started.
When I moved out to Phoenix, Arizona, I lived with my dad, and he worked at a Channel 3 News, KTBK Channel 3 News. He worked there for years. But he also, you know, to make ends meet, he also on the side worked at the radio station there, KEZ 99.9. You know, being a DJ back then, you would get all these promo records and you would get all these cassettes. So I would just, while he's, you know, on the radio, just look all around the studio at all of these cassettes and all of these posters. My dad instilled a lot of music history in me and a lot of music education with me, and he definitely plays a huge role in why I'm a DJ. He's a big influence on that. My brother and my sister, they played in band. I did not play an instrument. I had between my brother and my sister, I really had nothing going for me. Getting back to Denny's, late at night, we're sitting up there hanging out, and a song would come on the radio, and my dad would be like, who is this? I'll give whoever $5. He would be like, all right, $5 to the person who can tell me who this is that's playing right now. And for a while I'd be like, I don't know, my sister and brother, they just didn't really care. But one time I got it right, and it was Huey Lewis in the news, and he's like, here's $5, and I was like, yeah. So from then on, I made it a point. Every time it would be like anywhere, you know, it'd be in the grocery store, it would be like just anywhere. I had to know who was playing, because I knew at any moment my dad would ask me, who is this? And there was one time, you know, one of our little Denny's dinners, he asked us, and it was a really hard song, and it was actually, I think it was Chicago, Wishing You Were Here, and I got it right. And I remember my dad saying, wow, you are amazing. That is so cool that you know that song. And I just remember hanging on to that moment like, oh, you can play the trombone? Oh, you can play the sax? Well, guess what? You don't know Chicago like I do. You know, I would just rub it in my brother and my sister's face.
Man, you know, I don't know, it must have been like 15 years ago. I ran into this man who, and he looked like a cool, like, hard-working man. He was clean. I was like, hey, you got any records? He was like, yeah, come over to the house. So then when I went over there, it happened to be Plunky from the Oneness of Juju, his best friend. His best friend, I won't mention his name because I don't want people to bother him, but he helped start CTI Records as a promoter. So he was one of the first guys to actually run all these records around town on the West Coast. And when I went to his house, this dude must have had like, I don't know, 2,000 jazz records and stock quantity of Plunky's records. So pretty much any Oneness of Juju record that anyone would look for that is rare, I probably bought about 10 sealed copies of each one. It was a nice little come up.
One day I was in a store, an Aquarius, an old man come in, had a little sack with some records, 45s, tell me it was from Clarendon, and that he produced one of the Clarendonians records. And I had that original 45 with his name on it that he produced back in late 60s. So I bought it from him. It was warped. I just bought it, put some money in the man's pocket because I knew he'd come from country to try and make a little money there. So.
I think every DJ at one point in their life wants either a record store or have a record out or wants something, you know. They want to make a record, own a record store, one of those kind of things. And you know, I never had any kind of experience. I started collecting and DJing when I was like 12, I think, you know, back when like break dance music was in. I'm growing up in Chicago. I mean, it was definitely a house music thing here. You know, everybody was into house. And I remember in the 80s when you lived here, you wouldn't hear hip hop here in the clubs, or all the high school dances would be house music and stuff like that. It was just a different type of thing that I kind of miss. You know, it was definitely like, I guess if you grew up in New York, you got to see like hip hop, how it got made, or you know, graffiti being pioneered. But here you got to see like that with the house music stuff, which is kind of cool. And if you didn't see it, if you didn't grow up here, you'll never know what it's kind of about. And I remember I got out of like making like DJing and stuff a little bit, because over there when I was living in LA in the late 90s, they kind of hated the music I was into. They were into like trance, and nobody was really into the funk, soul, hip hop. It was probably a really small genre of guys in the late 90s, but it wasn't like it is now. and I ended up couldn't handle it. I didn't like LA, so I ended up moving back here, and that's what made me kind of get back into records.
But as soon as I'm able to sample records in the store and find something that's my aha moment, that was pretty much my primary goal when I first started buying records. And then it was eventually finding out what my own tastes in music were, which was a little bit of a process, but I did find some stuff that helped. And one of the things that did help me along that particular journey was one of my favorite local DJs, James Pants, who's now signed to Stone's Throw and gone away to Germany, but he was in Spokane for about ever. And he was such a good DJ, and I guess there was a moment in time where he had so many records that Serato became a good idea to him. So he managed to do things like give up, I guess, old records at swap meets and stuff. And me being a naive young adult type person, I brought some of my records and was like, here, I'll trade you these for these. And they're like, no, that's not how this works. You gotta actually pay for these records. And I was like, oh man. So I happened upon James Pants' little record stand and thumbed through his records, and I found one with this cool looking cover, this Zap Pow record. And most of Zap Pow stuff at the local record shop at the time was super expensive. So I think I happened across this for, I don't know, $10. He can remind me if he so happens to watch this. But I bought it, and I guess I was happy to buy it like minutes afterwards, because he was practically like very humbly asking like repeatedly if he could have the record back and that he made a mistake and all this other stuff. And I was like so excited to say no and everything, and I couldn't wait to listen to it. And it's a pretty good find. Nautilus, like before I knew that Wu-Tang sampled this song was pretty freaking happening. I guess the whole record is pretty cool, but the art was also very nice. So eventually I kept hovering around this record shop until I got Bob James's 1, 2, 3, and 4.
I was really into punk and 80s hardcore, metal, and jazz music. And I also liked hip hop music too. It was different though, like different, mostly underground hip hop.
But we had a music room in the house, so I played piano, played guitar, and today I play the drums. I ended up on the drums, and I think largely, my grandfather, who was a pianist, would come into town, and he would start out these competitions on the kitchen table. All of us siblings, who can tap out these patterns, and he'd come up with these wicked patterns, and he would always slap the table and say, "The little one." Now that was me. The little one's got it. My brothers would be all bummed out because here I was at 5 or 6 years old tapping out these patterns.
People are always saying, "Oh man, records are hard to find." I'm done digging. You can't find anything. But then you hear of these crazy spots, like right down the street. Maybe about 15-minute drive. There's a supermarket. To this day, I just went last week. I won't tell you where, because everyone's got their secrets, but there's a supermarket. You walk in, you can buy food, man, but there's one thing you can buy a lot of, and that's records. Nobody knows, all right? And there's a location. You walk in, the dude's like, yeah, I'm not gonna let you in if you don't buy 100 records, but if you buy more, I'll let you in. You go through the side, right by the bottled water. They open these 2 gates, all right? It's a supermarket. You walk in through the back, bam, must be like 30,000 LPs sealed, and there's about maybe 50,000 45. So for any of you guys in the LA area, step your game up.
You talk about digging and getting dirty in the US. You really want to get dirty. I have a dig in there in Kingston. So I'm going to show you some things there. Right here, original Studio One Jamaica All-Stars, and never been reissued. I find these for like maybe 100 to 200 Jamaican dollars, say maybe $1.50 approximately. A rare album there. Wailers, All in Things, Gay Lads, Roy Richards. Paragons on the Beach, a rare Treasure Isle original press in there. All legendary Scatterlight right there. Some Eptones there I find digging through things there. 45 I find in Jamaica. B.B. Seaton doing Bill Withers' song Lean on Me. You hear a lot of versions, Jamaican versions that Ain't No Sunshine. This is the first version I found of the Lean On Me, Bill Withers. Such a nice track there. 12 inch is a big thing in reggae music. I start out in maybe the later part of the 70s, I think, at 12 inches. It kind of coincide, you see, with a disco after 12 inches. Usually I have an extended mix and a version on the B-side. This is Observer 90, the Observer Tenement Yard right there, Dennis Brown, Horace Andy there. So a lot of things. Joe Gibbs, let me show you this one right here. 45 RPM, disco single. Babylon Bridge and Mighty 2. Wicked cover right there. I show a sign of the times there with the bell bottoms and all those things. Wicked things. Joe Gibbs, same way. Another one, a Joe Gibb label. Check this for a close-up right here. Serious, wicked cover right there. Probably the best 12-inch cover I ever see, you know. Gregory Isaacs and Rankin Dread on the GG Records right there. Hitbound Studio Channel 1 on a Maxfield Avenue, West Kingston. A Revolutionaries, Hitbound, all of these things there. Channel Jar.
One of my favorite hip-hop artists of all times, most influential would have to be Tribe Called Quest. I don't know, I'm from Nebraska, and Nebraska is, you know, kind of Midwest. So, you know, a lot of my friends, you know, they would listen to like West Coast. Some people would listen to West Coast, some people would listen to East Coast, and I kind of like a little bit of both, but just any Tribe Called Quest album. Back then, I didn't even know what sampling was. I thought that they made the beats. I didn't know anything about jazz sampling, or it's just been a big influence, you know, like ever since I was young, a really big influence. And I've always traveled and like listened to like jazz, and it would mellow me out. But this was like jazz and hip hop, so I got like two things in one.
My mom is like R&B, my dad is like just this plethora of, you know, rock and soul and funk. And I had hip hop, and that was, purchasing a Tribe Called Quest was just like, that was me. And I love the fact that they use jazz, and that it was just like something that I could get down with, you know. In Alabama, like it was, you know, it was 95 South. It was a lot of like booty bass, you know, stuff like that. And the Tribe Called Quest was like my portal into like this hip hop world that I love. And people are into this West Coast music. I just could not. I couldn't fit in anywhere. So Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul, Pete Rock and CL Smooth, you know, artists like that, that was just kind of like people that I could identify with. That was like my center as far as music. And everybody thought I was like weird when I would be like, hey, have you heard this, like, have you heard Troy by Pete Rock and CL Smooth? And they're like, what is that? I've never heard of that, you know. And it was just like, you know, for a while, like I just never fit in. But then, you know, as I grew older and I kind of came into my own, like it just started finding people and connecting with people who were like on the same page with me, and as far as hip hop, and that's what made me want to become a DJ. was to be able to play stuff for people who don't fit in, you know, and it's cool. It's not that it's cool, but it's okay. It's all right. You don't have to fit in, and you know, that's why I love to DJ.
So here we are. It's our little shop here on West Adams, down here just north of South Central in Los Angeles. Small spot, just kind of getting it going. We did pretty good today, bought a bunch of records. We got these couple of stacks came in. Cool Latin. Got psychedelic Joseph Bird doing American Yankee Doodles. Weird jazz. Always the classic soul. All sorts of stuff, every day.
So let me tell you, some of these shops are very poor. If you go to Aquarius Records up in Halfway Tree, on Agley Park Road, they don't even have any power in the shop, no electric. So if you want to check the records out on a turntable to give them a listen, they have to crank the generator just so they have you have some power in there. They'll bring out a big stacks and just pile them on the counter. You go through them. A thumbs up or thumbs down. A thumbs up mean you want to keep it, and the man will take it and I drop it on the turntable for you to listen to. That's the process usually. I drop the records there, you look through a lot of records in not such good condition. It's one of my favorite records. Was searching through piles and piles of crappy 45s. I look up on the counter, see this Mau Mau Productions, a tribute to Tenasaw, one of my favorite reggae artists. Boy, I couldn't believe it. So I think I have a live dancer as interviews from the radio with Tenasaw. Tenasaw, of course, the man who do Pumpkin Belly, Fever. Well, I couldn't believe when I found it. Really have to be in a wicked condition. I'm so happy to find that one.
My favorite record that I just treated myself to is this DJ Crush record. I actually didn't have this on wax before. I listened to it digitally and I knew that I had to get it on wax and it was very expensive, but I just treated myself to this for my birthday most recently, and so far it's my favorite record right now. These are my two first records that I ever got, actually. This Damned record and this Black Sabbath record, so I guess by default these would be my two favorites. And I bought these, I didn't even have a record player yet. I bought this Black Sabbath record just because of the label. The tag on it says 666. I thought that was really strange, so I bought it. And I got this because I really like the Damned. And that same, I know that my grandmother had a record player, and so I just went to her house and I picked that up and I went to go get like a preamp and speakers the very next day. And then that's kind of where I started. And then at shows, I just started collecting at shows of like persistently, where I would go, sometimes I would go to the show and like just get the 7 inches and like not even pay to get in or anything. Just go to the band and buy the record that I wanted and kind of take off, because I probably had to go to school the next day. I was really young.
The first record I ever bought, I'm pretty sure it was something like Mr. Magic's Rap Attack, like some kind of rap comp.